Tonight, we celebrate the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. Tonight, we celebrate what's good in the world of sports with our Spotlight on the Positive segment. And tonight, we celebrate our 300th episode of Thursday Night Tailgate. Here are your hosts, Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari. Guys, congrats, have some fun, and take it away.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and yes, indeed, tonight we celebrate our 300th episode of Thursday Night Tailgate, and what an unbelievably great ride it has been. It's a huge milestone for us, and we'll celebrate an even bigger one a little over a month from now when we celebrate our 6th anniversary and induct our 4th Hall of Fame class on Thursday, September 21st. More about that in the coming weeks. But tonight, it's number 300, and we couldn't be more thankful to all of you for listening. You know, so many of you, like our good friend Kyle Willoughby, all the way down in New Zealand, have been with us since episode number 1 and have encouraged us along the way. So you've seen the show grow from a 1-hour show with 1 guest to a 2-hour show with 5 guests, and you know, we've added great partners, you know, over the years, like the NFL Alumni Association and Mike Ditka's organization, the Gridiron Greats, who we love. Please go check them out online at gridirongreats.org. Plus our other wonderful sponsors, like the great folks over at Kaiven Foods. You can visit them online at kaiven82.com. The Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat. What a wonderful place that is up in beautiful Nashville, Indiana. Also, our new friends over at Topps, and National Baseball Card Day is coming up on August the 12th, so just a couple days from now. Find out what they have going on at a ballpark near you by going online at Topps.com. Tonight, Bob and I, like I say, we're celebrating number 300, and we're going to do so with 3 of our TNT Hall of Famers. Plus, we'll catch up with one guest who joined us very early on and it's certainly a long overdue revisit from him, plus a wonderful new friend who it was so great the last time that we couldn't wait to have him back on the show. And those guys are, first up, you know, TNT Hall of Famer, Louisiana Sports Hall of Famer, and former Rams and Chiefs wide receiver Eddie Kennison. Got my Eddie Kennison jersey on to have me show my support for Eddie tonight. Following Eddie, former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins is going to be here in his regular weekly time slot. About 45 minutes from now, we'll get a return visit from former Bears Pro Bowl defensive back Mark Carrier. And Bob and I, like I say, enjoyed our time with Mark, you know, so much that, you know, the last time he joined us a little over a month ago. And Mark is a regular over on the No Huddle show with Brian Weber and Cordell Stewart over on TuneIn.com. Their show airs live Monday through Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. But Mark was really great the last time, so we were very excited to have him back on the show with us tonight. We'll kick off hour number 2 with that long overdue visit from former Vikings wide receiver turned actor and movie producer Matthew Hatchette. His film production company, Hatchette Films, produced a great independent movie called The Take, starring Rosie Perez, and she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in an Independent Film for her role in that movie. But Matthew is out in California doing some great things, so we look forward to catching up with him. And then we'll round out tonight's show with a return visit from another TNT Hall of Famer and should be Pro Football Hall of Famer as well, and that is former Vikings and Chargers Pro Bowl guard Ed White. So look forward to catching up with Ed, and check him out online. What a great artist Ed is at edwhiteart.com. So, folks, we got a lot of great guests that we are looking forward to sharing with you tonight to help us celebrate number 300. And again, we can't thank you enough for tuning in and taking the journey with Bob and I over the next couple of hours. But we'll start things off like we do every week here on TNT, and that's bringing in my co-host, Mr. Bob Lazzari. Bob, 300 episodes, my friend. What an amazing ride.
Well, congrats on 300, Chris. It's an honor to work with you. And like you said, you got to give a shout-out to Kyle Willoughby. There is not too many more devoted people I know. This is a guy who's listening. Chris, it's 12 noon in New Zealand right now on Friday. So, you know, that tells you what kind of scope this show has covered. But, yeah, thanks to guys like him and all these great guests we get. We couldn't do it without. All these people are just so great to be around. And like you and I said off the air, if we could do another 300, we're doing something, my friend.
Absolutely right. And And our thanks to all our wonderful listeners out there. Kyle being a big one. We have so many wonderful listeners that have been with us over the years and encouraged us along the way. Our thanks as well, obviously, to our announcer Joe Lajanusa for what he does for us every week. Plus, our good friend Angelo Kane, who was in the co-pilot seat with me for so many years prior to you coming on board, Bob, and you were a great guest and a great friend and a great contributor before that. So you've really been along this ride the whole time as well. Going all the way back to when we started in September of 2011. But my thanks to Ange and Bob. Like I say, don't sell yourself short. You were a great supporter and a great mentor before you came on board as a full-time co-host. And when we look back, you were right there in 2011 as well.
I appreciate that, Chris. And the difference between myself and you guys is I can't remember any of this stuff. So in a way, that's pretty good. So I just go for the next show. That's it. That's the way I'm wired. And again, you'll keep me up to date how long we've done it, and you take care of all those details, my friend.
It's the old adage, Bob. You take it one show at a time.
Oh, me? 1 minute at a time, my friend. You know that.
All right, fair enough. And, before we get into our weekly Bob's Take segment, Bob, talk about, your show over on the TV side, Monday Night Sports Talk, along with our friend Tony D'Angelo. Who do you guys have coming up?
Well, we have had a month off, Chris, little vacations for people at the studio. Some of our tech guys have been off. So our next show, I believe, it'll be 8/21 is our next show. And we're still in the planning stages of that. But, I've had some good guests this summer. As you know, Kurt Bavacqua came on. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of crossover of the people on this show to come over there as we head into the football side of things. It's obviously the preseason is in full swing right now. So that's the time we like to hit with these guys and have a lot of fun. So appreciate the shout-out. MondayNightSports.net. Go to Monday Night Sports 14 for all the interviews there.
Yeah, and over on your YouTube channel as well, right?
Right, correct.
It's time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
And let's get into our Bob's Take segment for this week. And Bob, the first thing I want to get your thoughts on is a pretty disappointing picture that I saw out on Twitter. Little League softball officials disqualified an entire team, the Atlee team out of Virginia, when 6 of their girls posted a picture giving the middle finger to one of the other teams in the tournament. The caption that accompanied that picture read, "Watch out, host." They were disqualified for unsportsmanlike conduct and inappropriate use of social media. So, Bob, what's your take? Were these girls treated too harshly, or did the league take appropriate action against them?
Well, Chris, this goes beyond sports. It goes beyond youth sports, beyond Little League. It's more of a reflection of society, social media, things like that. I read the article. Eric Adelson on Yahoo Sports read it, and I think I was on the same wavelength as him. It was really, really disgusting, Chris. I mean, look, this is a team that had there are only 12 players on a team when you get to these all-star levels. So half of them are doing something incredibly, and I hate to use the word stupid, but it is. There is no other word for it, on social media. Now, I mean, Chris, number one, that the coach cannot condone things like this, and we would never accuse him of doing that, although he was very, very kind of apologetic on behalf of the girls, said the punishment did not fit the crime. I don't agree with that. It was Eric Adelson's opinion that, hey, if something like this happens, the parents, the kids, and the coach get a major, major wake-up call and a learning experience. If you're the coach, Chris, you have to stress to these girls with the power and presence of social media now and how much kids that age are on it, that they just have to be kind of careful. I mean, never mind going on there, flipping the bird on social media as if this was not going to be seen. I don't know. It borders on the line of insane, Chris, and stupid, and it's just, it's more of a reflection on our society, Chris, than anything else. But I was very, very disappointed to read it. But if one person out of those 6 or one person out of that whole team learns from this, and because Eric also made a great point that these kids don't want to jeopardize when it comes to filling out an application when they're going to be going to college or filling out a job application where they could look at social media and say, we don't want this person. Maybe this comes into light back then in the future. And again, I hope it helps some kid there, and I'm sure it will.
Yeah, and I think that's, if you want to look for the silver lining like in this, right? Spotlight on the positive, all that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think that's what you hope for, is that whether, one of these girls or any other kid that's looking at this, sees it as, okay, here's the thing not to do, right? As much as, you might want to trash talk somebody, whatever it is, whatever the rivalries might be out there, all of those sorts of things, hopefully this becomes a shining example of what not to do and the reason why not to do it, right? I mean, you hope it comes just, from internal character, but these are kids. Hopefully this becomes, something that they, to your point, Bob, learn a lesson from, and somebody else and some other kids, some other team that might have an inclination of, hey, we're rivals with this school, we're rivals with this team, let's put something out there. Maybe it gives them pause and say, you know what? No, let's not do that. And, and that's the lesson learned from this. So I'm with you. I think that is hopefully the silver lining in this situation.
Yes.
Bob, the big news around the NFL this week has been the season-ending knee injury to Dolphins quarterback Ryan Tannehill, and the Dolphins subsequently going out and signing Jay Cutler. Not only was the buzz about Cutler signing with the Dolphins, right, but it was also around the guy the guy the Dolphins didn't sign, and that being Colin Kaepernick, whose name is now going to come up every time a quarterback situation, a quarterback injury, whatever, a quarterback's playing poorly. His name is always going to be the one that pops up. We see this a lot of times, across sports when something like this happens. There's a big name waiting out there in the wings. So Colin Kaepernick is going to be that guy amongst quarterbacks in the NFL. So, Bob, what's your take? Did it make sense to you that the Dolphins would sign Cutler, a guy, Dolphins fans are surely going to be hating on all season? Does it make sense considering his experience playing under Scott Gase, in Chicago a couple years ago? And is it further evidence that Colin Kaepernick is being blackballed around the league?
Well, first of all, Chris, when I saw this, I said, didn't he have a job with the networks? And then I thought, well, that was Tony Romo. No, that's Jay Cutler, too. Both of them did. And I'm wondering if they reached out to Tony Romo as well. But that was the first thing that came to my mind. But, Chris, I look at it this way. They're looking at a quarterback, and the way the NFL is now, it's become, if you look right down the line, the successful quarterbacks in this league, for the most part, Chris, are very kind of drop-back quarterbacks who can pretty much throw the ball and maybe not too light on their feet, shall we say. You look at Brady. You look at guys like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning before he retired. I can go right down the line, Chris, a little less to the point when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers. But you get my point. That kind of quarterback is the kind that succeeds in this league. And I think they probably think if Cutler can get anything back, he's going to be pretty good under Adam Gase. If you look at his stats under Gase, Chris, compared to his entire career, they're actually decent. So they're just hoping, and that's all it is right now, is hoping, especially with a guy that hasn't been in football shape, and he's the first to agree with that. But so I'm not sure how it's going to work out. I was surprised they gave him so much money, Chris, but that probably is what it took to get him out of the broadcast booth. As far as Kaepernick being blackballed, Chris, I look at it this way. I think at this point, there have been quarterbacks that have gotten jobs in front of him that don't have the talent that Kaepernick did. But I don't think there's all these owners in the NFL sat down at a table and said, look, nobody here is going to sign Kaepernick. We don't care if you think you can win them. I don't think that happened, Chris. Not that these guys are going to get together and do it. I just don't think they can do it. I do think that they're all on the same page and saying, look, We don't think this guy. We think he might be a decent backup. I don't think he's a regular quarterback. I think he might be a good backup, but we don't want the attention. We don't want the negative attention. We don't want the spotlight on this. It can only wreck what we have here, which might be a good thing going. So I think that might be the deal as of right now. I don't think there's a GM out there that said, if I sign Kaepernick, I win a championship, and wouldn't do it, no matter what. You can minimize distractions, whatever you got to do. If the guy was that good, Chris, I definitely think he'd still be in the league. But it's one of those things. He kind of laid in his bed, and now he's dealing with the whole type of flack of it. I mean, I could see the arguments on both sides, but the way the NFL is right now, you're not going to win with Colin Kaepernick as your starting quarterback anyway.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting to me, Bob, and I want to go back to something you said a little bit ago when you talked about Cutler and being in shape. I sort of heard the quote where he said, I don't need to be in shape. I'm a quarterback, which is an interesting thing to say. I'd like to, I certainly want to validate that quote, but I heard some guys talking about it on Sports Talk Radio earlier today, so that would be interesting if that's actually what he said and how he said it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he brings to the table. I know the Dolphins, it certainly boasted, some of their players boasted about, the ability this year to catch the Patriots. And, certainly when you've got, those sort of expectations, those sort of hopes going into a season, and then you have something like this happen where your starting quarterback goes down, you're sort of reaching for straws. You want to hold it together. You want to be able to have a chance. Is Jay Cutler a guy that can do it? I think lots of teams have hoped for that over the years. We haven't seen it come to fruition. He certainly has the arm. He's always had the. I don't think anyone's ever questioned that. I think what they've questioned is some of his decision making for where he's trying to thread a ball into, and then you question obviously the attitude and Bob, we've seen it throughout history. We've seen it throughout some of our favorite sports teams. We've seen it with the Red Sox a few years ago back in 2012 that a guy with a bad attitude or a group of guys with a bad attitude can take a team that is rich in talent and take it right down the drain. So it'll be interesting to see what he has left, what he brings to the table, and really what the attitude that he has, what he shows on the sideline, and then how that interacts with the rest of the players. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. What the attitude is and how he carries himself. Both on the field and on the sidelines.
Yeah.
All right, let's move along to we've got our first guest, Eddie Kennison, hanging on the line, and we're going to get to Eddie here in just a minute. Folks, TNT, we are sponsored by Kyvan Foods. NFL star Reggie Kelly brings the authentic flavor of traditional Southern cooking to market with his Kyvan Foods products. Made with the finest ingredients, Kyvan Foods invites you to appreciate the goodness of the exceptional flavors that you're going to find in their salsas, in their sauces, in their apple butter, and other fine products as well. Make Kyvan items a part of your tailgating spread, either at the game or at home gating with your family and friends. Folks, the taste is just unbelievable. Available through Walmart.com and at select Kroger stores as well, or you can order online through Amazon or Kyvan's website itself at Kyvan82.com. And Kyvan is spelled Kyvan. Speaking of baseball, the baseball season, we're in the dog days of summer, but if you love the game, you've just simply got to go to the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. They were inducted into the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence Hall of Fame. The museum is a very cool experience for everybody in the family because you get to go in there and walk their live production line and see some of the 1.8 million bats that they make every year, and they've been doing it now for 132 years. Don't miss the Bat Vault. You hear me bragging about that every week here on Thursday Night Tailgate because you get to go in there and hold some of the game-used bats from the game's greatest legends. Guys like Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth and Ted Williams, my hero growing up, Willie Stargell. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go to sluggermuseum.com. We are also sponsored by our good friends, and TNT Hall of Famer Randy Minier and the great folks up at the Salt Creek Golf Retreat in Nashville, Indiana. And Nashville, Indiana, folks, oh, by the way, was voted one of the top 20 small towns in the country by Smithsonian Magazine. Let's hear a word from our friend Joe LaGenusa about how great a place it really is.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giants fullback Randy Manier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf and a fully furnished 1- or 2-bedroom condo. After your round, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today.
Yeah, we can't say enough great things about the golf course, the condos, and, of course, Randy's staff, who are all outstanding. Go online to saltcreekgolf.com to see for yourself how great a place it is. All right, now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is TNT Hall of Famer, Louisiana Sports Hall of Famer, State of Missouri Sports Hall of Famer, and former Rams, Saints, Bears, Broncos, and Chiefs wide receiver Eddie Kennison. And Eddie first joined us back on episode number 6, folks, October 27, 2011, probably wondering who these two guys were asking him to come on a show that he had never heard of. And here we are tonight, right? Episode 300, and this is Eddie's 9th appearance with us, which is an absolutely incredible blessing. On top of being, both a great player in college and in the NFL, Eddie also does great work raising money for lupus research with his foundation. He's also gotten into the wine business with his company Barrel 87. You can find a link to Barrel 87 on our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. You can find it online at Eddie's site at Barrel87.com. We can't thank Eddie enough for his friendship over the years and for being a great member of our Hall of Fame, and we're glad he is back with us again tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Eddie, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, Eddie.
Oh, Chris and Bob, I really, really appreciate that very, very nice introduction, brother. I keep coming back because you guys do an absolutely fantastic job with representing the sports world and representing yourselves very well on radio. It's always pleasant to hear positive things about what's going on in our country, and it comes from you guys' radio station, and it's always a pleasure to be on and more of a pleasure to listen to you guys. So thanks for having me back on again.
Oh, we appreciate that very much, Eddie. Thank you. So, Eddie, last year we inducted you into, our Hall of Fame, our guest Hall of Fame, and just, back in June, the state of Louisiana jumped on board and inducted you into their Sports Hall of Fame. So talk about, the honor, what that was like to be recognized at that level by, your home state.
Well, I tell you what, it was very emotional. And, it was just one of those deals where, when they call and say, hey, the Louisiana sports writers have elected you in, and, you kind of get this idea in your head of what this event would potentially look like. So I had an idea in my head, what this event would look like. And let me tell you, when everything unfolded, the few days that we were in Natchitoches, Louisiana, it far exceeded my expectations. My little thought process didn't do it any justice. Louisiana, they did an absolute fabulous job with putting that event on. And I know I had about 75 to 80 of my family and friends in Natchitoches, brother. And I think, every time we have a phone conversation, friends and family, we talk about Natchitoches, Louisiana, because it's so fresh. And I can't be more proud of what the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame have done to represent Louisiana athletes, coaches, mentors, just everybody. And it was absolutely fantastic.
And Eddie, Ed Reed was also a part of your Hall of Fame class there, as were a couple other big names from guys from the golf world and baseball, and David Toms and Juan Pierre. Did you get to spend any time talking with those guys?
Oh, absolutely. We had a lot of great conversations, be it lunch or dinner or just walking around in in downtown Natchitoches, and just the events they had for us every evening. It was absolutely fantastic. So you guys will hear my 4-year-old there outside playing basketball. It's all right, buddy. He was saying his big brother blocked his shot on the basketball goal. So he came over and gave me a hug. How wonderful is that? But I got to spend a lot of time with David, with Ed, with Dee Dee Bro, who's 41 years in coaching at LSU women's gymnastics. So I got a chance to spend a lot of good quality time and get to know those guys, and it was fantastic. And we've actually had conversations since then, just on the phone or via text. And so I think friendships were definitely gained during that process, and that friendships I think will last for the rest of our lives.
And Eddie, Ed Reed came into the league several years after you, but you guys played against each other a couple of times. What do you remember about going up against Ed Reed and the Ravens?
You calling me old?
Not at all.
Oh boy, let me tell you. Yes, Ed Reed. I did get an opportunity to play against Ed, and obviously, you guys know just as well as I do. He's in the top 3 safeties of all times in NFL history, and he was a freak of nature. Roaming the defense and heading up that defense. Him and Ray Lewis. Ed will go down in history as when safeties come into the league. If coaches don't show Ed Reed film, they're doing the league a disservice. So, he was absolute phenomenal talent, and getting to know him, at the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, I say he's even a better person. And, I can't wait to he and I get together again and spend some more time, because he has a beautiful soul, man. He has a beautiful mind. Ed is one of the guys that will give you the shirt off his back. And, right now he's giving back to, his community. In Louisiana, and he's doing some things across the country, community-wise or countrywide, and doing some fabulous things with his foundation. So I couldn't be more proud of him, but even more glad to get to know him the few days we had in Natchitoches.
5 questions for Eddie.
Hey, Eddie, thanks for joining us on this special occasion. You've been very gracious to join us both on the radio and the TV side. We love you. We love your family, and it's guys like yourself that keep the show going. So thank you in advance. And, Eddie, I look back on your high school career, speaking of Louisiana, at Washington Marion High School, and there's been a few people to play in the league, and probably most notable outside yourself was Vincent Brisby, who was a pretty good name up here in New England for a few years. I was just wondering if your paths crossed over the years, and do you have a pretty strong network of alumni down there?
Well, I can't say that our alumni is very strong, because we had only a few guys out of my high school to go into the league, and Vincent was the very first guy from our high school to make it to the National Football League. And Vincent and I were still friends to this day. He's the one that actually that kind of showed me a few ropes when I was getting ready to come out of high school, and while I was in college at LSU. And he was kind of my mentor getting ready for the league. So. He was, and the alumni, the Washington Marion alumni, just the student body is very strong. But we only have a handful of guys that came out of my high school into the National Football League.
And Eddie, I think we've talked about it before. When you came in the league, you were kind of an all-purpose kind of guy, can run back kicks, catch the ball incredibly. And what I always was impressed back in the day was your returning ability and that mindset that went into it, Eddie. And the first thing I thought about today was Did you ever come across a punt returner who didn't think they shouldn't take it all the way to the house?
Well, if they did, they probably were not a punt returner or a kick returner.
True.
You know, every guy that I know, you know, it was the mentality that when the ball is in my hand, we taking it to the house. And, you know, that's the mentality you have to have with the game. You know, you can even, think about running backs whenever the ball is handed to them. If they're not thinking about taking it to the house every game, you don't need to be playing that position. So far as receivers, you know, yards after the catch, you know, so it's all that mentality, of making it to the end zone. So, yeah, if you don't have that mentality, you probably shouldn't play the position, let alone play the game.
And Eddie, I want to get your thoughts on your alma mater, LSU. Ed Orgeron took over last season after Les Miles was let go 4 games into that season. He led him to a 6-2 record, the rest of the way. Kind of looking ahead to this season, LSU is going to have to face Florida, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, all on the road. How do you feel about where the program and the team is at and their chances this year in the SEC West?
Well, one thing we know for sure, even when Les was head coach, Coach O, he was, the front runner for recruits, getting recruits to come in. So, we have to believe that, just because he became a head coach, his recruiting efforts probably heightened even more. And the few guys that were probably on the bubble about going to LSU, they stepped up big time and said, yes, I'm committing because Coach O got the head coaching job. So, I think with them going, playing on the road or whoever's coming in, I think Coach O is one of those guys that the guys want to play for. He's a player's coach. And, you just look at, some of the posts that the guys are going in with him. And, so when, I think the guys will even go above and beyond to play for him just because of, the way he is as a coach. He's a player's coach. You see him on different posts, he got his shirt off, he's messing with the guys. And those are the guys, that's the coach that guys will say, you know what, our coach is super cool. He understands who we are. He gets who we are. And, they're going to do everything they can to go play for him.
And Eddie, let's talk a little bit about the NFL and the Chiefs. And, your boys are coming off a 12-4 season last year, but they seem to struggle in the postseason. You're curious to get your thoughts on Alex Smith and the quarterback situation, and have the Chiefs gone as far as Alex is going to be able to take them?
I don't believe so. Alex, I think we may have, talked about this before, but Alex can't play defense. Alex, he put the ball in the end zone, helped the ball get into the end zone as an offensive quarterback, and scored enough points to be able to win a game. And, we're one play away from tying the game and going into overtime, to go to the AFC Championship game. He can't do both. And Alex is a darn good quarterback, and I believe Alex is a guy that can take the Chiefs to the Super Bowl and win it. You look at anybody can look at the stats for Alex. They can say, he don't throw the ball downfield. He throws the ball down. It's needed. The game isn't about throwing the ball down the field. The game is about winning. And Alex, Andy Reid, those guys have done nothing but win football games. And as much as we want to win, the Super Bowl every year is just highly unlikely. You got one team that has pretty much dominated the last 10 years. So, but they haven't won it every year. Yeah, so I think Alex is a big talent, brother, and I do believe that Alex is a guy that can lead the Chiefs to the Super Bowl and help the team win the Super Bowl. And, there are a lot of variables that come into play as a team. Alex doesn't play special teams. Alex doesn't play defense. Alex is the leader, of the team, and everyone has to rally and everything has to come together, on game day for this team to be able to win the big game. Alex, people say he's a game manager. Well, that's what you're supposed to be. You're supposed to manage a game so you could win. And getting, that one play away from the AFC Championship game, one play away from going into overtime to potentially go to the AFC Championship game, I mean, that's how close we are. And every year that Andy Reid has been here, every year that Alex has gotten here, that has been a quarterback here, we've gotten better every single year. So, I do believe that Alex is the guy to lead this team to a championship and ultimately into the Super Bowl. So, yes, I believe in Alex. Alex can win.
And, Eddie, the AFC West is going to look crazy here, very soon because we have the LA Chargers now, and we'll soon have the Las Vegas Raiders. As a guy who played, for so long in the AFC West, how crazy is that going to look?
Oh, man, I tell you what, Vegas will get a whole new crowd of people because everybody will want to go to Vegas from every team. And I think, with the LA Chargers, I think, a lot more people will want to go out to LA because they've always wanted to visit. Now they have an excuse to go. So, the first few years will be very interesting because they're going to get an influx of everybody from every team going in. And, I think the announcers, myself, you guys going to have to get used to saying, Los Angeles Raiders and the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. That does sound weird, but we're going to have to get used to it, and it's going to be a fun ride, brother. It will be a fun ride.
Bob, a couple more for Eddie before we let him go?
Sure, Eddie. Looking back on your career, you had so many great years. I think 7 seasons where you had 800 yards or more receiving, and of course the best 2, the 1,000-yard seasons came in Kansas City, 04-05 with Trent Green throwing you the football. Eddie, talk more about the kind of ball he threw and what made you guys click.
Well, Trent was he put the ball in the breadbasket, bro. I mean, he was just, you could have blindfolded Trent and he could have thrown to a spot. We had a deal, where we made, a deal where be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. And the way our offense was ran was based on timing, speed and timing. And, and we worked on it, during the off season. We worked on it during OTAs and, we were just there and, we made sure that we didn't get off the field, whether it's practice or whatever the case may be, until we had things down where we were comfortable with each other, just that chemistry and saying, okay, I get it. Okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. Okay, this is how he's going to throw the ball. Okay, Eddie, I know this is how you run your route. So, it was just that constant trying to perfect getting to know each other. And, Trent he was a perfectionist. And if you guys ever watch him on television, I mean, he's still that way to this day. So we constantly worked on it, brother. And, we're constantly still working on our friendship, man. We still have dinner every so often and call and text and all of that fun stuff. So it's been fantastic. I just saw him Tuesday. I went up to St. Joe to Chiefs training camp, and he was there as well because he had production meetings with the crew. So we got some time to spend up there as well. But yeah, he was super fantastic as a quarterback.
And, Eddie, finally, for a guy that played 13 years in the league, your body took a beating, but I know that you're the kind of guy, you get out of football, you were a sprinter, you did a lot of things before you got to football, but it's not like a lot of people think that these NFL players just give their bodies a rest for the rest of their lives and do nothing. Dispel that myth, Mr. K.
Well, I'll start off by saying this. Yes, I played 13 years, and yes, my body still hurts to this day. And but what I won't do, I think my body would hurt even worse if I did not exercise. So I still get out and, and I walk, and I still go in my basement and, try to do yoga just to keep things stretched out, keep it moving. And I tell you else what helps is my 4-year-old. He keeps me on the move as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I think a lot of guys, they're told, get out, exercise, get out, do all of these fun things. Find it, the trust is doing a lot of great things where they're partnering with various gyms across the country for guys to be able to go in and do workouts. And, all of those things are super great to get out and keep moving. And, it's not just for NFL guys. Everyone needs to get out and do some form of exercise because it's only healthy for you. And when I retired at 35 years old, I'm thinking I have at least 55 more years, 60 years to live. If I just sit around and do nothing, brother, I would be miserable.
Eddie, you have a wonderful foundation, the Quick Start Eddie Kennison Foundation, that raises money for lupus research. I saw out on social media that they're going to be roasting you later this month at Arrowhead Stadium, raising money for lupus research. Do you got your bulletproof personality vest ready for that event?
Yes, I do, brother. And I have some pretty tough skin, and when I agreed to do it, I know it'd be a lot of fun moments. I'm sure there's going to be some emotional moments because the guys that are going to be roasting are guys that I spent either time in the locker room or my entire life with. So it's going to be a little bit of both, brother. And I'm actually looking forward to it to see some of the things that are brought up, some stories that I'm sure I will remember. I'm sure there's going to be some I won't remember, but it will be. I'm so looking forward to it. But the most important part of the evening is, raising awareness for lupus research and raising some dollars for lupus research. But I think it'll be a great evening. It's Tuesday, August 29th. Out at Arrowhead Stadium, and we got a pretty fun lineup that's coming in and that's going to speak. So it's going to be fun, but I can't wait for it.
And Eddie, like I mentioned in your intro, you also have a wine business. Talk about Barrel 87.
So if Barrel 87 is a virtual online wine club, wine, beer, and spirits, and once a month I hand pick and select all of the wines, the beers, and the spirits, from anywhere in the world. And my wine club members get access to these various wines, beers, and spirits that I select. And I deliver it right to their doorstep, or I ship it right to their home business. And we get an opportunity, during the course of the weeks where my club members, they call me and they say, I want to do a home tasting. So I go to their home and I do a home tasting for, my club members and 10 or 15 of their friends, and just make it more intimate. And it's a beautiful thing that I've seen, because I get to go visit, people in their homes, our club members, and get to know them personally and get to hear their story and get to learn about their family. And Barrel 87 was created out of love to be able to get to know who people are and be able to touch them and be close to them and hear their stories about football, and then teach them about wine, and then we're tasting and drinking wine. And that's what Barrel 87 is all about, brother. It's about love. It's about coming together and creating stories and memories.
Well, I signed up and I'm a member, and I certainly highly encourage all of our listeners to go out and check it out, barrel87.com, and I might take you up on that wine tasting or that spirit tasting the next time you're in Atlanta, my friend. So hopefully we get the opportunity to catch up with you.
Your shipment is getting ready to go out tomorrow, so you should see it by Tuesday next week.
All right. Looking forward to it. Thank you. Thank you, Eddie. So, Eddie, let all our listeners know, remind them, how can they, stay up to date with all the great things you're doing, both, online and over social media as well?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is Eddie III. My Twitter is E Kennison III. I think that's what it is. And they can find me on Facebook, Eddie Kennison. And I'm on Instagram with Barrel87 at Barrel87 _ wines. And, they can check us out, see the things that we're doing, and they can comment and have all of their good fun on social media.
Brother, it is always an amazing joy to have you as part of the show. We can't thank you enough, Eddie, for your kindness and your generosity over the nearly 6 years that you've been joining us. We hope you'll come back, real soon, share more of your stories, talk about the roast that they got cooking for you, and come back, share your thoughts on LSU and the Chiefs and what's going on around the league. You're fantastic.
Oh, thank you guys, and I can tell you this: as long as you guys are on the radio and whenever you want me on, I will be on, brother, so no worries.
Thank you, Eddie. All the best to you and your family, my friend. We look forward to catching up soon. I look forward to the shipment and catching up with you about that as well. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Eddie. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, take care. That is former LSU and Rams, Chiefs, and a couple other teams that Eddie also played for as well. But Eddie Kennison, a finer individual, Bob. Folks will not find anywhere on the planet. Eddie is such a joy to be around, and his positivity and his generosity and willingness to come and share stories with us and all the great things he's doing for lupus research and other things as well. Boy, it's just been a tremendous blessing to be able to say that Eddie's been on the show 9 times now and has been with us practically from the very beginning.
I love that man, Chris, and you're right. As good as he comes across on the radio, you and I have had a chance to deal with him behind the scenes, and he's accommodating. He's a gentleman. He's a great parent. He does everything so well, and is just such a quote unquote nice man. And, again, that's why he's one of our Hall of Famers, and we can't wait to speak to him. Anytime he wants to come on, he's got a carte blanche, right?
Yes, he does, indeed. All right, we've got our next guest, Mark Carrier, hanging on the line. We'll get to Mark on the other side of this station break.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and you're listening to TNT, Thursday Night Tailgate. Brace yourself for the explosion.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is former Chicago Bears Pro Bowl free safety Mark Carrier. And let me remind you about Mark's background. He's from Lake Charles, Louisiana, so we got a Louisiana theme going here so far tonight. He attended high school at Long Beach Polytech in Long Beach, California, where he was a 3-year varsity starter and named Parade All-American and USA Today All-American in 1985. Played his college ball at USC, where he became USC's first winner of the Jim Thorpe Award, which is presented annually to the nation's best defensive back. He was inducted into the USC Athletic Hall of Fame in 2006 and was named to the Pac-12 All-Century team. And oh, by the way, one of our guests later on tonight, Ed White, is also a member of the Pac-12 All-Century team. Fox Sports named Mark the 7th most dominating defender in USC history. He was a first-round draft pick, the 6th overall selection by the Chicago Bears in 1990, one pick ahead of his USC teammate, Junior Seau. Mark played in the NFL from 1990 to 2000 for the Bears, Lions, and Redskins. He was named Defensive Rookie of the Year in 1990 when he led the league with 10 interceptions, which also happened to set a Bears franchise record. He was named to the Pro Bowl 3 times in 1990, 91, and 93. His 32 career interceptions has him tied with safeties like new Hall of Famer Kenny Easley and fellow USC alumni Troy Polamalu. Since his playing days, he's been a coach at Arizona State and in the NFL with the Ravens, Jets, and Bengals. He is currently a regular contributor over on the No Huddle Show on TuneIn.com with our new partners Brian Weber and Cordell Stewart. Their show airs live Monday through Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're honored that Mark is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Mark, Chris, and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, guys. I just wanted to make sure I had to get it right. Normally I'm on East Coast time. Now I'm actually on the West Coast, so I had to make sure I'm on West Coast time.
Well, we appreciate your time here tonight, Mark. And I wanted to start our time with you by getting your thoughts on your alma mater, USC. They're going to open this season ranked number 5 in the nation. They have 7 home games this season. It's going to be Clay Helton's second full season as head coach as he took over midway through the 2015 season. So how do you feel about your boys and their chances to make the playoffs this year?
Well, you know what? I obviously I like them going in. What I'm having a hard time I'm going cautious is, obviously with Sam Darnold coming back and all the hype and everything, that are they getting too hype? I mean, it's almost like they're building this kid up so high. I mean, he's pretty much the first overall pick and the Heisman Trophy winner, and he hasn't played a down a ball going into the 2017 season yet, but yet they got him projected at all that, and they haven't even let the kid play. And you don't realize, SC lost a lot of guys on the offensive defensive line. They're obviously very talented. They've got players. They've got good skill players, but they lost some bodies on the offensive defensive line, and you don't know what you got until you put it out on display. So it remains to be seen, but man, you think about that 2011 team that came the year before, came off of 10 wins with Barkley, and I think they finished that season not even ranked. So you just got to wonder, man, are they just getting too much hype right now off of the Rose Bowl?
And Mark, when you think about going into the college football playoffs, right? Obviously you got to get past the Pac-12 and teams like USC and Washington and Oregon and all of that. When you look ahead to the other teams in the Pac-12, who scares you?
Well, being an SC guy, none of them scare me. I'm just going to put that out there right now. They should be scared. Let's get that one straight. Don't even ever say that to a true Trojan, because if you ask a USC guy, you say scared, and they answer it, they ain't a true Trojan. So no one scares me. But as far as respect, obviously, you always got to look at right now what's Washington doing. I'm a big Chris Peterson fan. I think he's done a heck of a job. Obviously, we know what he's done at Boise, and then being in the Final Four for the national championship last year with the group he had, and he's got a quarterback come back. So you got to feel they're up on the rise. But but I think the thing that worries me about SC's schedule this year is they don't have any breaks. I mean, they kind of, I'm not feeling sorry because we didn't have it either, but they kind of go, once they get going, they go straight through. So you don't have that time in between to kind of get yourself ready, get healed up, and get to the next game. Get prepared for, a big hype game and everything like that. They do have to go to Notre Dame, this year, and that's always a tough game. And then your rival with UCLA is you never know how that's going to go, but it's going to be an interesting schedule this year.
Bob, questions for Mark?
Great to have you back, Mark. And when I look at your back in that 1990 draft, Mark, and I think it goes under the radar that you were the 6th overall pick that year. A couple Hall of Famers before you, and Junior Seau right before you. Just wondering, Mark, did you feel a lot of pressure going into camp being a number 1 draft pick, and how did the guys receive you at the very beginning?
Well, first of all, yes, going to obviously going to Chicago and being around that group, there was still a lot. That was 1990. There was still a lot of the 85 Bears guys still there, so it was still that reputation was still there. And then I was replacing a favorite, Dave Dorson, who's now deceased, but who was a really team favorite. They brought me in and eventually released him, and so there was some backlash behind that. And then another one, third was, hey, we can bring in a guy from the West Coast, a California kid, to come play in Chicago, the Monsters of Midway. Will he be tough enough to handle that? So there was definitely a lot of different things going in that I had to deal with going into that season. And the best thing I did is shut up and play and let my speaking do the talking.
And Mark, did you learn a lot that first year as far as technique and things like that? People, I guess, think you come into the NFL, you have speed or whatever, and you teach footwork. I mean, tell us what you learned that first year about the craft.
Well, you know what? The technique-wise, that wasn't a big deal. I was pretty technically sound. I learned my skills. I learned more of my skill set from my other coaches, from my college coach and my high school coaches that I dealt with. In the pros, I mean, it's technique, but it was more understanding the scheme. Most I learned about that, playing with that group and that those guys, was the mental part of the game. How mentally tough you have to be, and how you got to block out the elements. You got to block out home life. You got to block things you got to block out, and be dialed and focus in on what's important on the now. What's need to be important. I could give you an example. I remember it was kind of like mid to late October. We're getting ready to go out to practice. It was, maybe 60 degrees, wind whipping in Chicago. Hey, California guy like me, I'm coming out to practice, and I got, sweats on, hoodies on, some gloves on. I'm dressed like it's 30 degrees. And the guys see me as I'm walking up the hill at old Hallis Hall, and they stop me in my tracks, and they tell me and point at me and tell me, right now, take your little skinny ass, excuse my language, back into that locker room and take all that crap to it. I'm like, hey, screw you guys. I'm not going back. I'm like, I can do what I want. And, they were threatening to kick my butt. William Perry, Steve McMichael, Richard Dent. You know what I did? I went back and changed. But it was afterwards where Mike Singletary came to me and talked to me on the side and said, young man, the reason why they're not doing that to haze you. They're wondering where your mindset's going to be when we go play Green Bay in the middle of December and it's below zero. Are you going to be worried about being cold, or are you going to be worried about doing your job? And those are the kind of things that those guys taught me about understanding, being focused, and worried about doing your job and not let other things come into play to distract you, because we depend on each other, and if we're not in it with us, then you're against us. So I learned a hard lesson for the right reasons that still carries me today.
And Mark, before I get to my next question, I just wanted to pass along. Eddie Kennison joined us right before you joined us, and he's also from Lake Charles. So he wanted to pass along his hello and thanks for joining us as well. So I wanted to make sure we got that out there to you.
I'm not a wine drinker, but listen to Eddie, I feel like, hey, I need to grab some of his wine and everything. It sounds great. I'm not normally a wine guy, but listen to you guys talk about Eddie's wine. I'm thinking, man, I'm about to get a drink of some of that wine here.
There you go, barrel87.com. Go sign up.
87 guy, I got to sign up. That's right. I got to represent the Lake Charles guys.
That's right. So, Mark, you talked a moment ago about what you had to deal with. I was curious around, how much when you joined the Bears, how much and how often did you hear about, the monsters of the Midway and Dick Butkus and the '85 Bears, and how hard was it to kind of live up to that tradition?
Well, it was hard because that '85 Bears, it's still argued today as one of the best NFL teams ever. Ever, not just at that time, but one of the best teams ever. Obviously, one of the best defensives ever in NFL history. And being around in Chicago, being a great sports town like Chicago, they thrive on that. They keep that. They make it. Those guys are still very big, loom large in the city today. Still today, 30 years later. So coming in there and then playing on that defense, again, I was replacing a team, a fan favorite with Dorson. So you hear about it all the time. Monsters of the Midway, toughness, being aggressive. No matter what, either win or lose, you better go down fighting, because that's what that mindset. The players before me who were there, that was kind of the line, the establishment that they set up, the criteria to play in Chicago, play with the Bears, representation, Dick Butkus, those guys.
And Mark, I don't know if many people outside of the Midwest really grasp how deep the rivalry is between the Packers and the Bears. Was there extra juice for you guys when it was Packers week?
Oh, yeah. It was big time. I remember Keith Van Horn, who's a fellow SC Trojan, played with the Bears for a lot of years, played on a Super Bowl team, and he was helping me out quite a bit getting acclimated into Chicago. And I remember we were getting ready to go play Green Bay in Green Bay, and he was trying to tell me, hey, Mark, I just want to give you kind of understanding of what this rivalry is all about. He said it's how do you say UCLA or Notre Dame, magnify that important and how serious and how intense this game is, then that's the level of mindset you got to have to go play in this game. And I was fined and suspended a bunch of times in the NFL, and 2/3 of them all came in the Green Bay game. So I understood the importance of that game.
And, Mark, you touched briefly on this last time you joined us, but how often are you confused with your cousin, who also happens to be named Mark Carrier and played wide receiver for years with the Bucs?
Hey, you know what? Not a month ago, I still get cards to sign here today, and I got another card of with Mark's. It's funny because the cards, I got about 3 or 4 cards, and there was 1 or 2 cards with me and Bears, and then there was a card with Mark and the receiver. So I'm sitting there thinking, at one point they had to look at these cards and realize there's 2 different guys because they're on two different teams. So, but you know what? I signed my cards and sent the other cards back, hoping they realize, hey, that's not me. It's my cousin. But it's like I said, it still happens today, and it's still fun with. Mark and I still have fun with it, and still. Hey, you recognize. I've just recognized that as the other Mark, not me, not the Mark from Chicago.
So I was curious, like if a fan or somebody comes up and I don't know all the different events that you do, but if they hand you a picture of the other Mark Carrier, like a picture of Bucs wide receiver, a Bucs mini helmet or whatnot, at this point, Do you just sign and smile and say, here you go? Or do you tell them, hey, that's not me?
You know what? Because knowing how out of respect and how important people are with the paraphernalia and their apparel and these autographs and these things, a lot of people take it very, very serious. So I think at one time I might have signed it just because I didn't want to make waves, but also out of respect. I know how important some of these things are for people. At least, I never get disrespected or be ill or mean or bothered. I try to be as cordial and nice and explain to them but I will ask them, hey, if you want me to sign it, I will, but that's not me. So I always give them the option for them to say, if you want me to sign it, I will sign it. But I at least want to let them know that it's not who I am. That's the other mark, but I'm more than willing to sign it, but I don't want you to get the wrong signature. And most people, everybody, I've never had a bad situation when I've come up where people felt mean, or most of them have felt embarrassed, and I just want to make them feel that it's okay. It's happened before, and make them feel comfortable so they don't feel because some of them, especially young kids, when their parents send them up there thinking that's what it is, and the kids realize it's the wrong one, they feel very embarrassed. And I just want to make them feel very comfortable that it's no big deal.
And the two of you were in the league at the same time, right? You had 7 of your career interceptions against the Bucs, which I'm sure some folks may not remember that the Bucs used to be in the same division with you guys. But did you get matched up against one another?
Oh yeah, I remember the first time I made a tackle on him, and you could hear the announcer say, "Carry on the catch and carry on the tackle." And we both got up, looked at each other, laughed, and walked, and went back to our respective huddles. But we just thought it was so fun. We just thought it was so funny.
Bob, a couple more for Mark before we let him go.
Yeah, Mark, after 7 years in Chicago, speaking about rivalries, you find yourself in Detroit for 3 years, a division rival, the old black and blue division, etc. Just wondering the feelings, Mark, how was that, especially that first year going up against guys that you used to room with? It had to be a very strange feeling.
It was very strange. I was actually, the first time I went to play him it was actually, I think, third or second game of the season, and it was in Chicago. And for the first quarter or so, I think I was in a funk. I think I actually started going to the wrong locker room, but it took a minute. It took a quarter for me to kind of settle in and get just like, I talked about earlier about being focused on the game and doing your job at hand. But I'm not going to kid you. I do remember it. I was kind of in a somewhat haze a little bit. I was trying to go through the motions until I finally snapped in. The positive about it is that, we won. We beat Detroit. I'm already screwed up. We beat Chicago my first year in Detroit in Chicago, and it was I had a very good game, had an interception, so it was very memorable. I remember my teammates on the defensive side kind of picking me up and giving me a game ball because they knew the seriousness of my ties with Chicago and to go in to play well and to win. It made me feel good.
In your last season in 2000, Mark, you played in Washington. You played well. You played almost in every game. You kind of went out on top, but did you know that was going to – when did you know that was going to be your last year in the league?
That's a good question. Probably midway in the off season a little bit. My body wasn't responding like I wanted to, like it normally did. It was taking longer to kind of just to feel normal. Even through minicamp, they went through a coaching change, and Coach Schottenheimer came in with his crew, and then just kind of going there for the training and getting into the workouts, and one, physically I just wasn't feeling right, and then two, mentally at the time you could you've been around enough, you could tell, hey, the marriage between myself and this group is not a good one, and it's not, and it probably needs to end. So it was kind of one of those things that probably happened for a reason type deal, and it was a mutual split, and it was, I kind of knew at that time it was time.
Mark, before we let you go, let our listeners know how they can stay up to date with all the things that you're doing, both online and over social media as well.
I think last time I talked to you guys, I had not got a Twitter account, and my kids were getting on me. Well, now I do. I finally do have a Twitter account. It unfortunately, it's always been bombarded by SC stuff, but it's at Mark Carrier 20, my Chicago Bears number on Twitter. is where people can find out what's going on, what I'm doing, what's up next, and I do. And then also my LinkedIn account, I've got that going now. That has more of a resume of all the various things I've done and where I've been and other things I've got going on. So those are two ways people can find out what's going on in the real Mark Carrier, the Chicago Mark Carrier.
And Mark, how can our listeners catch you over on the No Huddle Show and the other things that you do over on TuneIn?
Like I said, I don't know that because it comes random when I get filled in and he called me up, hey, can you come in? I get to come in, so that'll be announced on my Twitter account when I'm going in to be on TuneIn. As a matter of fact, I think at the end of next time I think I'm due on is the end of August. We're trying to finalize the dates, but stay tuned. I'll post it and let people know when I'm on especially when they want to get their NFL fix on what's going on in the NFL in the huddle with the TuneIn group.
All right, very good. Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of the show tonight. It's like I say at the top of the show and in your intro, you become one of our favorite guests. We really enjoyed you so much last time. We couldn't wait to get you back on the show, and already looking forward to the next time you'll join us. Thank you so much for your time. You're fantastic.
My pleasure. I was excited when I got the call saying, "Hey, can you be on?" I was like, "Of course." There was no hesitation. I remember put it in my calendar and make sure I didn't forget. So thank you guys for having me.
Thanks.
All right, Mark. Take care. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That is former Chicago Bears Pro Bowl free safety Mark Carrier, and Bob, when you look back over Mark's career and the things that he did right out of the chute, Defensive Rookie of the Year back in 1990, and boy, what a great player he was. And you look at the 10 interceptions, and then the number of interceptions went down, over the next, several years. But I'm thinking that's more to the sort of Deion Sanders effect, if you will, the Mark Carrier effect that came in there, and guys looking around saying, "I'm not throwing to that side of the football field." He helped eliminate, part of the football field for that Chicago Bears defense. Great player.
When you think about it, Chris, not too many guys came into the league with such a splash because, as he said, still have some of those 85 Bears. The ghosts of those guys still on the team, and for him to lead the league in interception, and it surely seems the league got onto him quick and probably didn't throw his way as often. So it's amazing, and I still click on the wrong Mark Carrier when I go to look at stats, and I'm sure you've done the same too. So he's always a pleasure to speak with.
Yes, he is. All right, coming up here in hour number 2, we've got a couple of former Vikings going to join us, Matthew Hatchette and Ed White. Matthew's hanging on the line. We're going to get to him in just a second. Before we do, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at the Gridiron Greats organization. Folks, please help support a wonderful cause that's taking care of guys who literally left so much of themselves out on the field. Remember, folks, these are the guys that played back when they still had to get off-season jobs to help support themselves and their families. It's organizations like this one that was started by Mike Ditka, the Gridiron Greats, that are there trying to help the guys that we all grew up watching and reading about. Please go to gridirongreats.org to see what you can do to get involved and to help support that wonderful organization. We're going to get to Matthew Hatchette on the other side of this station ID.
You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL legends live on, with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lasseri. Available on TuneIn and Podbean. Now, back to Chris and Bob.
And now making a long overdue return visit with us on the Kaiven Foods guest line is former Vikings wide receiver Matthew Hatchette. Let me give you some more background on Matthew. He is from Jefferson, Ohio, which is in the very northeastern part of the state. Played his college ball first at Mercyhurst and then later transferred to Langston University in Oklahoma. Matthew was a 7th-round draft pick in 1997 by the Minnesota Vikings. Played in the NFL from 97 to 2003 with the Vikings, Jets, Raiders, and Jaguars. He also played one season over in NFL Europe from the Amsterdam Admirals, where he was named to the All-NFL Europe team. In that season, he broke the league's receiving records in number of passes caught, yardage, and touchdowns. For his NFL career, he had 60 receptions for 887 yards and 6 touchdowns. And after his time in the NFL, Matthew moved out to California and started an acting and producing career. He was the executive producer of an independent film called The Take, starring, amongst others, Rosie Perez, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in an independent film that year. Matthew's production company produced that film, and we're excited to finally have him back with us here tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Matthew, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it, man. Oh, that's a great intro, by the way. Thank you. I didn't even know all that stuff about me.
So, Matthew, it's been a minute, my friend. Catch us up. What's been going on? What have you been working on lately?
Oh, man, I'm just out here loving life in Southern California. Like I said, sports and entertainment, those are still my 2 lanes. I'm out here on the high school football field as we speak, just getting done. High school coaching at Long Beach Poly, offensive coordinator here. So looking forward to this football season doing this. And still doing the production stuff and, the movie stuff. Got my partner Brad Furman has his next film coming out called Labyrinth with Johnny Depp playing the officer that saw the Biggie and Tupac murders. So that that's about it. Those 2 things, and I'm just looking forward to that.
So, Matthew, as I was sort of going back and looking over, your game stats and that sort of thing, as a Steelers fan, I love when guys have big games against the Ravens. And your first big game came in '98 in a 38-28 win over the Ravens. You were targeted 9 times in that game, 6 catches, 95 yards. And, your team, there with obviously Randy Moss, Chris Carter was on that team as well. Talk about what you remember about that night.
Oh, man. I remember Cunningham just kept saying to me in the huddle, be ready. And he kept throwing it to me because usually, he'll say that and he'll still throw it to Chris or Randy, but he just kept throwing it to me. And they were kind of trying to bracket Chris in the slot, and they were rolling the safety over to that side on Randy's side. So I remember I had a lot of one-on-one coverage that day, and I was like, I just took advantage. I caught the ball when it came to me, and I had a big game.
And, Matthew, one of your teammates on those Minnesota teams was a guy who's near and dear to our hearts, and that's Todd Stussy. Todd's been a wonderful friend of the show for years. Curious to get your memories of playing with Todd.
Oh, I remember. I still talk to Stussy here and there. Like I said, I'll hit him up on LinkedIn or we're connected some way somehow. But, yeah, he was one of the animals. He was one of the guys that I had fun with as a lineman. They always playing the most games and having the most fun. So I pretty much remember him just being like the clown of the offensive line and of the offense, really. But like I said, good guy, good character guy, and he could play some football. But I remember him, just all the other stuff he used to do just out off the field, like on plane rides and stuff like that. Just a big teddy bear, fun teddy bear loving guy. Even though he was big, but he was just a good guy.
And Matthew, one of the other teammates that you had over your time there in Minnesota that's another good friend of the show and one of our actual TNT Hall of Famers is defensive back Leonard Wheeler. Was curious what you remember about going up against Leonard.
Oh, I used to kill Leonard Wheeler, man. No, I'm just playing. He's gonna hate me for that. The thing I remember about Leonard Wheeler though, his wife had a baby, like, I think as soon as he got there, and the baby was like maybe 6 months or 8 months. It was just the cutest little girl. She had the most hair I've ever seen on a baby in my life. And it was just so cute. And I remember we used to go to Bible study, and he would always, bring the baby, and I always held the baby during Bible study. So I was just like, I remember that again. On the field, that stuff is, it's okay. It's in the back of your mind, but when you start thinking about people, it's really about the relationships and about the character, the stuff that you built with these guys more than just football plays.
Bob, questions for Matthew?
Yeah, it's great to have you back, Matthew. And I want to take you back to that 97 draft. We often talk to people, their feelings on draft day, et cetera, Matthew, and their expectations. Tell me how exciting it was for you. Did you have any inkling Minnesota was interested, and how did it all come about when you got a phone call?
Well, it's funny. I had back in the day, I came from a small school, and we didn't have a pro day. So I worked out. I had 14 separate workouts, for I think a total of 18 teams. So sometimes 2 teams came. I think maybe 3 teams came. And I remember my fastest time was a 4.39 and a 4.38, and I ran that for Baltimore and Atlanta. And then my worst time, I think, was like a 4.56, which I ran for the Vikings. And I remember that workout. Chip Myers, rest in peace, who passed away. The receivers coach for the Vikings came out and worked me out. He's throwing me through the drills, and I'm doing all this stuff. I had a great shuttle, horrible 40 time, and I dropped a bunch of balls. So in my opinion, I had scratched Minnesota off. I didn't have a great workout for Minnesota. So I don't think they're going to get me. I thought the Cowboys were a little bit more interested, the Rams at the time, the Ravens at the time. And then draft day came. The first day, nobody called because that's when there was a 2-day draft, and the first 3 rounds were on the first day. And after that, the next day was, 4 through 7. So nobody called on the first day. The second day, I started blowing up. I think Dallas called, Rams, Vikings, Cincinnati, I think, or whatever. And I'm just sitting there like I just did not think the Vikings were going to get me. And then I got a call, and it was Dennis Green. He's like, Dennis Green. He's like, you want to be a Minnesota Viking? I said, yep, and the rest was history. And till this day, and I just remember that moment when Dennis Green called me, and like I said, rest his peace as well. Denny, he passed away last year, and I went to the funeral, and I just remember everything about that very first phone call Denny Green called me. I think that's the day my life changed. I believe that's everything that I've ever done as an athlete or as a person getting ready to get drafted one day. It was in that 5-second phone call that Denny Green called me where it all came to fruition, and I remember vividly. I really do, and it was a life changer and a great day for me.
And your offensive coordinator those first couple of years, Brian Billick, Matthew, when we think of him, we think of a very scholarly guy. People think of him as a commentator, but back then he kind of knew his X's and O's and always had the reputation of being an offensive genius. What was your relationship with him like?
He didn't love me. He had a bunch of other toys to play with. I was the old rusty car in the garage that you didn't want to drive, So, because we had so many guys, you had even like Chris Carter and Randy, you still had Robert Smith, you had Jake Reed, so all these other guys were higher on the totem pole than myself. But like I said, as an X and O guy, he was pretty good. The systems that I run now in high school football is the exact same system that I got from him. The same philosophy. Like I said, take calculated shots. And even though people think we just threw the ball all over the place, we actually ran the ball pretty well. The games that we won were always pretty much off of running the ball and then play action and going up over the top. So I have that same philosophy till the day. Definitely a great coach, definitely a great X and O guy. At the time, I didn't get to know him well because it was such a player-coach relationship. I'm just scared to death to make a mistake in front of the guy, and I really never had personal conversations and personal relationship with him, unlike some older veterans would have with a coach. But like I said, if I see him here and now, I think I saw him at Chris Carter's Hall of Fame speech. The last time I saw him, spoke to him for a little bit. Even though he's out here in Cali a lot doing the NFL Network, I just haven't really caught up with him. But yeah, like I said, my whole philosophy and coaching spirit is through Denny Green and Brian Billick era.
And Matthew, talking about coaches that you played for, you played a season with the Jets under Herm Edwards. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what it was like playing for Herm.
Defensive coach. when I was talking to the other coaches, because the head coach out here is Antonio Pierce, who played linebacker for the Giants and who's on ESPN now. And so I'm talking to all the other guys. I'm like, whenever you have a defensive coach, you just do different stuff, stuff that nobody really wants to do. When you're an offensive coach, everything is calculated and very on time every day. And defense, they just want to go out and hit and do tackling drills and stuff like that. Like everybody do an interception drill. So the quarterbacks have to tackle as well as the receiver. This is making stuff up. So, but I remember, like I said, Herm he's a great motivator. Like I said, locker room guy for the older vets who's pretty much, like I said, take a day off to some veterans and stuff like that. But I remember just a defensive coach, and we would always, I think we won a couple games just dressed maybe 3 or 4 receivers at times. Then you have an offensive coach, you're always dressing minimum 5, most of the time 6. So just like little things like that I kind of remember from Herm.
And Matthew, another good friend of this show, Anthony Becht, was there with you that year in New York. I'm curious of your memories of Anthony.
Yeah, I still talk to Beck as well. I coached the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. So Beck coached that year once with me, and then I think he commentated last year. So I've been catching up with him once or twice a year so far as well. So yeah, he, like I said, he was a dog. I remember him, big guy, big tight end, one of the bigger players I've seen in a long time because he pushes like 6'7". He's up there. Like I said, it's still cool to this day. I always had a good time with him, and like I said, we hung out a little bit in New York and got to catch up with him over these last couple of years as well.
And Matthew, you played with two guys who were first-round draft picks, but didn't live up to the first-round pick when you were with the Jaguars. Two guys at wide receiver, Troy Edwards, J.J. Stokes.
Mm-hmm.
Curious, if you ever kind of talked to those guys and what it was like for them, trying to deal with being a first-round draft pick, a lot of hype around them, and a lot of expectations. Was it tough on those guys?
I think JJ probably handled it a little bit better because don't forget JJ was also in San Francisco first, so he got a chance to be around Jerry and T.O. for a while, and then went to Jacksonville, and it just didn't take off from there. But looking back at it now, I mean that there's the two first rounders after that in Jacksonville. That Jacksonville took first round were Matt Jones and Reggie Williams. Those they didn't even get a chance to get into their careers. At least Troy and JJ, they had an NFL career. The other two guys didn't even have a career. So, I still JJ, and he was just the big body at the time when the big receivers were just coming into, being the sexy pick in the NFL. So he kind of was just a big guy, but he was never the technician as a receiver. But I think he still had a pretty good NFL career, just not a high first round talent career that that they were expecting. So, but then again, looking back, you got a lot of the guys who, you have to kind of go to the right system. I mean, I'll be the first to tell people, if Randy Moss did not go to the Minnesota Vikings, his career would have been different. Would he still been a Hall of Famer? Who knows? I mean, if you don't have a quarterback that can reach, Randy on go balls, then you're not running go balls. If you don't have a system, a guy on the other side, if he was the first receiver and he's getting double teamed as a rookie, you don't put up 20-something touchdowns. So all those things have to play in a part of what type of system you're in, what type of coaching staff you have, and also what players in that system with you. And because Randy was a number 3 receiver, Jake and Chris were 1 and 2. So the first game of the season, he was coming in and going on the nickel guy, of course, running right by him. And then they finally figured it out, but then they were still doubling Chris Carter, so he still got man-to-man coverage. So, I think all those things play into guys having full careers in the NFL, and again, the lines the stars have to line up for you to be successful for a long time in the NFL.
Bob, one more for Matthew before we let him go.
Sure, Matthew. I got a few, but we'll have to get you on again and get them all in. But you mentioned your coaching now, and the first thing I thought of when you were talking about the kids and everything, Matthew, was these kids must look at you and say, man, there's a guy that played in the league. I'm going to be like him. Now, you have to be in a position, Matthew, where you got to be realistic on these kids, but you don't want to shall we say, downplay their dreams. How do you handle that, man? You got to be I'm sure you got to go out and say, look, there's a good chance you're not going to play in the NFL. We're here to kind of make you more of a man than anything else. But how do you handle that?
Well, here's the funny thing. At Long Beach Poly High School has the most NFL players from any high school ever in history. So that conversation is a big conversation here. And we also have about 5 or 6 All-Americans who they have a very good shot at going to the NFL. But I can't have that conversation with them until they understand how to get there. And that's work ethic, that's discipline, that's dedicated to the sport. And are you interested in going to the NFL or are you committed? And that's the thing. Nowadays, they're projected so high in college, and they can really go to college and do 3 years and then go to the NFL. It's a calculated thing nowadays of going to play pro sport. But the thing is, you still have to follow this path, and it's the hard work. It's the hard work ethic type of guy. That's 99.9% of the kids who are in the locker room in an NFL locker room. There's not one player in an NFL locker room, you ask their ex-teammates, what type of player was he? he was just lazy. That's how he got to the Pro Bowl. Yeah, it doesn't happen. That's not the conversation. All those conversations, he was the hardest worker. He was the first one to practice. He was the last one to lead. He was always doing extra. He was always doing it. And everybody has the same thing. So I tell all these kids now, if you have those aspirations, all you got to do is keep this up. Keep the work ethic up. Keep watching more film than everybody. Keep, coming to practice earlier, staying later, doing extra. If you do those things, you'll have a better percentage of going to the NFL. But if you do those things and you don't go to the NFL, your character and your persona is already big enough. You're going to be successful in anything you do anyway. And that's the message I'm trying to give them.
Excellent.
And that's a great message. Good for you, Matthew. Before we let you go, my friend, let our listeners know how they can stay up to date with what you're doing, whether it's online or over social media.
Oh, yeah, my social media, I don't think I really do. I get on the Twitter a little bit. I don't really Instagram or Snap, Chisel, nothing like that. So my Instagram is Twitter at Hatch89. There's an Hatch89 at Twitter, whatever it is. And that's about it. That's all I do. Like I said, I might get on Facebook once every 6 months or something, but not too much. But I do tweet a lot.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come back on the show. We hope you'll come back much sooner next time, share more of your stories and insights with you, because it's been great spending some time with you and catching up with you tonight.
Oh, thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, anytime. Let me know. We'd love to come back on.
Thank you.
All right, take care, Matthew. All the best to you and your family.
All right, fella. Thank you. Take care. Peace.
Good night.
That is former Vikings wide receiver Matthew Hatchette, and like I say, Bob, the thing that sticks out when you go back and you look and you think about, his time in the league and trying to make a name for yourself when you've got Randy Moss and Chris Carter and Jake Reed as the other wide receivers in there, and the fact that he had some big nights, and then the unbelievable year he had in NFL Europe, setting all the league records over there. He was a great talent. So as he talked about, getting into the right system, which is obviously spot on. You got to wonder if Matthew had gotten into a better situation where he could have, been a 2 or a 3 wide receiver. What his NFL career had been like.
It's true, Chris, because when you bring up his stats and you look at his career, every time he was thrown the ball, his yards per catch was very, very good. And what does that tell you? I mean, he had to play behind and with some incredibly talented receivers. You're right. I mean, timing is everything. He doesn't seem bitter. I'm sure there was a lot of frustration there, but his yards per catch was incredibly good. But he's doing exactly what he probably should be doing with his life, Chris, as far as giving back to kids. Those kids out there in Long Beach are very lucky to have a guy like that cares and has played at this level, and I'm interested to see how he does out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to keep track of all the great things that he's doing with that program. All right, we've got our next guest, Ed White, hanging on the line. We'll get to Ed after this quick station ID.
Hear your favorite NFL legends sharing their stories and insights every week right here on Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Take it away, guys.
The door is locked. There's no way out.
And now back with us and making his 9th appearance on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Thursday Night Tailgate Hall of Famer and Vikings Hall of Famer and Chargers Hall of Famer, and the list of Hall of Fames that Ed is a part of, as longer you can shake a stick at. He's certainly one of our favorite guests and one of our favorite people, by the way, anywhere on the planet. And like I say, that's Mr. Ed White. And Ed first joined us back in March of 2013. He's become a wonderful friend and has left a lasting positive impression on both Bob and I. And let me give you a little bit more of Ed's background. He played his college ball at Cal, where he was a defensive tackle, and was a consensus All-American back in 1986. Switched over and played guard in the NFL from 1969 to 1985 for the Vikings and the Chargers. Was a 4-time Pro Bowl selection. He played in all 4 Super Bowls for the Vikings back in the 1970s, one of only 10 guys to do that. Like I said, he is a member of the Vikings' 25th and 40th anniversary teams and has been named one of the 50 greatest Vikings of all time. He's also on the Chargers' 40th and 50th anniversary teams, and he's a member of their Hall of Fame. He was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 2000, and he is also a member of the University of California Hall of Fame, the Breitbart Hall of Fame, the East-West Shrine Game Hall of Fame. He was named to the Pac-12 All-Century team. And like I said, he is one of our Thursday Night Tailgate guest Hall of Famers as well. And on top of all of that, Ed is one of the best artists on the planet. And if you haven't seen Ed's artwork, please go to edwhiteart.com online to check it out. And we are delighted he is back with us again here tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Ed, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hi, Ed.
Well, you're welcome. Great to be back. I didn't realize I'd been on 9 times. Dang.
Indeed, you have.
Time goes fast.
Yes,
well, it's good to be on.
Thank you, Ed. So,
yeah.
Ed, I want to kind of get your perspective as a guy who's lived in San Diego for a long time. You know, the folks over there haven't gone into an NFL season without the Chargers since 1960. So, curious, you know, what's the vibe around town? Are people hurt? Are they resentful? Or are they going to remain Charger fans even though they're in L.A. now? How do the folks feel around San Diego?
You got to start out with a hard question, right? Can I just say something? Can I say something first? I was able to catch a little bit of that interview with Matthew, and man, what a fantastic guy that's working in it's a tough area, Long Beach, and man, articulate and squared away, and that really makes me feel good about the type of players and type of guys that are coming out of the league today. But okay, let me answer your question now. Sorry, I had to
That's
say
okay,
that.
Please.
Yeah, and I think I grew up in San Diego, thinking I was Paul Lowe, and in the streets growing up and watching them, and it is just a great hole here. And I think for a lot of people, there's not very much news about the Chargers, and it's just it's a void, and I think it's the same void that a lot of other cities that have had teams yanked away, the Oilers, Cleveland. It's just it's a sad thing.
And so, Ed, for a guy like you who, was a part of the Charger organization, for 8 years, and, like I say, a member of their Hall of Fame, are you a Charger through and through? It doesn't matter where they play, or do you consider yourself a San Diego Charger and not an LA Charger?
I guess I consider myself a San Diego Charger, but at the same time, I feel like they're still the Chargers up there. I worked for the Spanoses as a coach after I played, and I really think they want to put the best team on the field with the best people coaching, and I have nothing bad to say about the family. I heard the economics professor at San Diego State make a comment on the news the day after they signed up in L.A. that his signature then made the net worth of the team increase by $3 billion. So, it's hard to it's hard to criticize a businessman making a business decision. It's easier for me to say, hey, I'm a fan and have been for a long time, and you yanked us by doing that. But in reality, he's got a big investment, and I think it was strictly a monetary decision.
So let's talk a little bit about, your playing days. And like I mentioned in your intro, you started out as a defensive tackle when you went to Cal, and
right.
you were pretty darn good being named consensus All-American at that position. So why did the Vikings, if they drafted you in the second round, and then they move you to the other side of the ball? What led to all of that?
Well, Chris, it's funny. You said something. I went to Houston for the Super Bowl and did a thing for Dan Pastorini, a fundraiser for Dan, and Joe Green was there. And I played with Joe Green in 3 or 4 or 5 of maybe All-Star games. And he said, Ed, you started in front of me. I went, well, I didn't remember that totally, and he said, I've always wondered why they moved you. And I said, well, the Purple People Eaters. And that's exactly why they moved me. They drafted me to play offensive guard. They knew that I was a defensive lineman. And, I would have loved playing defense. I could have played defense, and I think I would have excelled at defense. But I don't think my career would have been nearly as long. People are down around your legs, and they just don't last as long. And so I probably in the long run was better off adapting to a new position.
Bob, questions for Ed?
Ed, it's always an honor to speak with you. And I got to tell you, Ed, in addition to all your honors and how much we love you, I always think highly of you when I'm shoveling snow in New England in the middle of January. I think of Ed White on the beaches in Southern California wearing a flowered shirt with a cold drink, painting, and I'm saying to myself, some guy's got the life, So,
well, Bob, it's good to hear your voice too, my friend. But I want to paint a different picture for you. I live at 5,000 foot above San Diego in the mountains, and I'm shoveling snow too.
Holy, well, you got the scenery, right?
Not a lot, but I am.
That's great. But and just speaking of the cold, Ed, a guy, the first thing that comes to my mind, a guy from San Diego, a California boy, ends up in Minnesota for 9 years. Do you ever? This is the old Metropolitan Stadium. We're not talking about a Metrodome. We're talking about outdoors. Do you ever get used to that, Ed, or do you find ways to get a little warmer from week to week?
I got to tell you, Bob, as I look back on it, first of all, I played in a much colder game in San Diego, a couple of colder games, one being the Freezer Bowl in Cincinnati, and a couple others in freezing rain in Atlanta. And, it was amazing, but it was such a wonderful experience driving into that stadium with the parking lot at 10 o'clock in the morning for a 1 o'clock game filled with people barbecuing and smoke going up and, dressed in their snowmobile suits and having a good time. And I would drive in there and I'm thinking, man, you know what? I'm going to be doing this someday. And I think that it really was a huge advantage for us playing outdoors. And I'm glad we did, because most people, think the worst and prepare for the worst. I remember when San Diego played, when we played in that Freezer Bowl, our equipment man was so concerned about being warm and having scuba diving gloves and this, that, and the other. Well, we never thought about that. We just went out and played the game and, got warm on the sideline in between and figured that the other team was going to get psyched out, and they did. And it was a huge, huge advantage for us. And I think it's a big advantage for the teams in the NFL that haven't gone the way of the huge dome stadiums and gone indoors. And I think how many of them, probably a couple still in existence, but it's a huge advantage.
And Ed, I look back on your career, and I remember early 70s. To me, a guy like yourself, why you deserve Hall of Fame, not just because of your longevity, is because you basically revolutionized the guard position. Back in the day, tell me if I'm wrong, Ed, back in the 70s, it seemed to me like any guy that was maybe bigger than 250 pounds couldn't, quote-unquote, move too well and was going to be on the line. You, without you also had all this strength and were all these competitions, I remember, but you were incredibly, incredibly nimble. And to me, kind of after you, late 70s, 80s, that's when we saw offensive linemen start coming out of college who were athletic. So that's what I have to give a lot of credit to guys like yourself that kind of took away that stigma that guys could not move on the offensive line.
Well, you're right, Bob. And unfortunately, we got to be old timers to remember that. But I sort of was on the cusp of what they were calling the watch charm guard. I don't know if you remember that term, but they were the guys that it was a sweep. When I started at Minnesota, but our big play was a sweep, the Green Bay Packers sweep. Everybody was running and sweeping. And at the end of my career, everybody was zone blocking and not running too far. So the athletic ability. I think these guys are just as athletic. I don't think there's any question about it. But they're so much bigger. They're 300 and 40 or 50 pounds. They're what I weigh now, but they're playing it that way. I'm not sure I could get down in the stance. I know I couldn't get out of one, but they're huge people that are doing a different type of blocking. You just don't see a lot of lateral movement, pulling, and that kind of thing.
And Ed, you mentioned Joe Green a few moments ago, and you like Bob said, you are obviously one of the top teams of the 1970s, having gone to 4 Super Bowls in that decade, and you were frequently matched up against some of the greatest front fours in the history of the game. You played against the Steelers and the Cowboys and the Rams and the Raiders and the Redskins and the Packers, Bears, so many of the greatest players of the time, right? You were regularly matched up against those guys. So talk about what it was like going up against those guys, and who were some of the guys that were just plain nasty to go up against on a play-in play-out basis.
Well, a lot of them, and I'll mention them, but I got to mention this, that, I did a painting, and we're going to, it's going to be part of the opening season for the Vikings, and it's the offensive line and the defensive linemen dressed as Vikings, and a ship in the middle with Bud Grant and all that kind of stuff. And I was asked to write about it, and I started writing about the fact that I think the reason we were so good in the trenches is because I faced Alan Page every day. And when you face Alan Page every day, on Sunday, the task is probably not quite as great as you faced all week long. And, Alan was a lightning quick 255-pound, 260-pound defensive lineman, Hall of Famer, that got me ready. And I hope I got him ready. And we did. We got each other ready, and right down the line, Carl Eller, Jim Marshall, Gary Larson, Doug Sutherland, all those guys were phenomenal hard workers, and we worked hard. And I think that was a big key to our success. Was up front, we worked hard, and it showed on Sunday. And when you go up against the best, Bob Lilly, probably the top player I went against, Joe Green, Merlin Olsen, those guys were phenomenal, phenomenal players. And then the Packers, the Bob Brown, and a huge, strong, physical guy. Back then the middle linebackers were all like Nitschke. I think Nitschke was 6'6", 260 pounds, and the middle linebackers were like linemen back then because they played the even defense. So those guys were studs. So Mike Lucci, on and on and on. They were just big physical people.
And Ed, as we've said many times, right, and you just talked about it, a moment ago, you're certainly one of the best artists anywhere on the planet. So you talked about the painting you're doing for the Vikings. Update us on your artwork and, where people can go to see, all the great things that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And, thank you for all the guys, because, you guys were the first to really give back to guys that help you guys with the show in terms of helping them with their careers. And I appreciate it, and I know the other guys do as well, and we really thank you guys for that. I have 2 sites, edwhiteabstracts.com and edwhiteart.com, and I'm on Facebook, Ed White, or I can't remember, Big Ed, I don't even remember what it is. On Twitter, the same thing, Ed White Art. And I just, show my stuff there. Don't really make a ton of effort to sell it, but occasionally somebody wants to buy something and we work out a deal and I send them a painting, which is nice.
Yes, it is. Ed, you're a treasure to both Bob and I, and I know to the people in San Diego and Viking fans, Chargers fans, and all of that. But we can't thank you enough for being so good to us and all that you've come to mean to Bob and I, and like I say, 9 times on the show and Thursday Night Tailgate Guest Hall of Famer and all of that. But thank you so much for your time and for your continued support. Like I say, you're a real treasure to both Bob and me.
Well, Chris, Bob, you guys are you're the best. I appreciate it. And again, like I just mentioned, appreciate the guys that you have on the show. It's always class guys, and I enjoy listening to the end of the interviews. They're fantastic, and Matthew tonight was really a joy to listen to, a young guy like that. And I appreciate what you guys are doing and helping players. That's always been my big impetus, and as a player rep for the Vikings for 7 years, and it's just trying to fight for the rights of players. And there's a lot going on when it comes to that right now. I've got a lot of buddies I played with that are suffering with the head injury thing, and hopefully a resolution is going to come with that'll help out some of these families, and we go from there.
Well, Ed, thank you so much again for your time tonight, and we hope you'll come back soon, my friend, because it's, like I say, it's always a great time to spend time with you.
And same here. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.
Take care.
All right, take care, Ed.
All right, thanks, Bob. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That is former Vikings and Chargers Pro Bowl guard Ed White, and Bob, he's got a couple of his line mates in the Hall of Fame, and Mick Tingelhoff and Ron Yeri, but Ed is in, like I said when in the intro, a lot of Hall of Fames. It's one of the mysteries, I think you'll agree, to both of us, is how it has been so long. A guy that played 17 years at a Pro Bowl level, in the trenches, really never missed any time, was in there playing and play out. How he's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame is a mystery to me.
And it's not a longevity thing, Chris. 241 games, but this guy was incredible at what he did. Like I said, I'm not overstating it when I think he revolutionized the guard position back in the early 70s. And it's no coincidence, Chris, when he landed in San Diego in 78, 79, that's when Dan Fouts started becoming Dan Fouts. The numbers started getting gaudy and everything. So it's guys like Ed White that are responsible for this and don't get the credit. I'll go to my grave thinking this guy, well, I know he's a Hall of Famer. It's just a matter of politics now, whether he gets in. But, I'll always just think of Ed White as wearing the flowered shirt, looking at blue skies. I see these pictures of him, Chris, and I'm saying, this is not fair. Some guys, it just gives me a peaceful feeling when I just picture Ed White overlooking the ocean painting. And I'll just leave it at that tonight because I'm at peace right now.
And by the way, Dan Fouts is one of the guys, singing from the mountaintops, right, that Ed White deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So, kudos to Dan for doing that, and he's 100% right. All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on the Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the positive, hear which players are doing great things in their communities, and then we'll wrap up the show. We'll do all of that on the other side of these words from our friends over at Kyvan Foods and the Salt Creek Golf Retreat.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and I'm the owner of Kyvan Foods. And if you enjoy delicious food, you're going to love my Kyvan products, which consist of our honey apple salsa, sweet barbecue sauce, and an array of seasonings. For store locations, online orders, and recipes, check out our website at www.kyvan82.com. That's KYVAN 82.com. One taste, and you'll appreciate the goodness.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giants fullback Randy Manier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf and a fully furnished 1- or 2-bedroom condo. After your rounds, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
And we are back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who do you have for us this week?
Oh, Chris, I think we've mentioned Jordy Nelson in the past as far as some of the charitable things he did. And I was just reading on the Green Bay website today that they recently had, this is probably, I think it was the first week of June, they had a softball game he does every year, Chris. And, of course, he's very involved with the Young Life charity. It's a charity that him and his wife got involved with very early when he came into the NFL. It's a faith-based organization, Chris, that connects youth with a lot of adults in the community. And obviously, the way we started out the show tonight, this is a definitely need for it. But he was introduced to it very, very early in his career by one of his teammates, Aaron Campman. But he's been very involved, Chris. In the softball game they played June 3rd, they did a really great job. They have a home run derby. A lot of these guys can't play baseball or play softball, Chris. They're football players, but they have so much fun with it. I was looking at some highlights of it. They had cornerback Demarius Randall defending his home run derby title. It was pretty cool. They have all the records and they keep, but the bottom line and the good that came out of it was that they were able to donate $130,000 to the Young Life charity, and just from the softball. And again, this is a thing that does charity that does great things throughout the year. But kudos to Nelson and his wife for rounding up a lot of these Packers. As you know, Chris, that organization is incredible when it comes to giving back. We almost could do a thing on them every week. But Jordy Nelson and his wife, Young Life, check it out online, and I'm sure he'll continue as long as he's playing football for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great stuff, Bob. Yeah. And this week, Bob, I want to put the spotlight back on former Steelers linebacker LaMarr Woodley. And almost 5 years ago to the day, he donated $60,000 to cover the participation fees for every Saginaw public school student athlete to play football. His donation covered, every player in middle school and high school in that district. His high school alma mater is Saginaw High. So, now here we are, fast forward to today. He started a camp called Camp 56 to give, what he calls underdog student athletes a chance to be seen and recruited. Camp 56 gives, these sort of underrated high school students, the opportunity to receive development and exposure in a, college camp-like experience. The camp accepts participants based on, three things: character, academic, and athletic accomplishments. So they, screen which players they allow to come to this camp. So they bring in college coaches, 16 college coaches from, D2 colleges or universities come and, staff the, camp annually. They bring in guest speakers and coaches from around the NFL to come in and talk to the kids. The camp also teaches them life skills and provides classroom and film sessions as well to help, their full development, right? They get to go in there and see what it's actually like, looking at film, what the NFL players and college players do in the classroom, how they are taught and that sort of thing, how they break down film and the importance of doing that. So I want to give a shout out and kudos to LaMarr Woodley for what he's doing to continue, to give back to the kids in his home community. It's really a community. It's really wonderful things that he is doing and the commitment that he continues to show to those kids, where he's from. So kudos to LaMarr Woodley and Jordy Nelson tonight. Great stuff, Bob.
It is, Chris, and what a way to end the show. We started out talking a little bit on the negative side, but just to make a point. But there's always things like this that overshadow it and should overshadow it. And kudos to those two guys for what they continue to do. And, again, my favorite part of the show, and it's just there's never a shortage of people to honor.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? the reason why we do the spotlight on the positive is because these are the stories that you don't hear enough about. You might find a story, here or there, but it's here today, gone tomorrow. But 99% of the guys are doing great things, and it just doesn't get enough airplay or spotlight, which is why we have the spotlight on the positive. So 2 more good stories, and we'll have 2 more for you again next week. All right, Bob, it is time for us to put a bow on episode number 300 of Thursday Night Tailgate. Our thanks again to Eddie Kennison, Mark Carrier, Matthew Hatchette, and Ed White for joining us tonight. And Bob, thank you. It's always great sharing, not only my Thursday nights, but so many of the last 300 episodes of Thursday Night Tailgate with you, my friend. It's been a true pleasure and an honor.
Same to you, Chris. It's been an honor to work with you, and it's been a while now. And again, time just keeps flying by, and I kind of lose track of it. But that 300th was a special one, and it lived up to the hype as far as I'm concerned, because those guys were tremendous guests, and guys like that, Chris, Eddie and Mr. White. I mean, we can go on. Those are the kind of guys that put this show on the map. And guess what? They're still involved, so that tells you they're devoted friends. More than anything, they're friends, and that's why we do this show.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been true blessings to us, and so many, all of our guests. But the guys that have come back year after year, and time after time, we can't thank those guys enough for their encouragement, their support. And you're right; those are the guys that put us on the map, right? And we're not fooled at all to think that people are calling or are listening in to the show live or as a podcast because they care what Chris Mascaro thinks or what our takes are on things. Bob, we know that it's the majority of that is what the players think, and that's and that's one of our basic philosophies is we know that our listeners are out there listening to hear what insights and stories that our guests have to tell, and we can't thank them enough. And to your point, those are the guys that have truly put us on the map, so thanks to them. Next week, we've got a great lineup in store for you again, and here's who we got. We got former Giants defensive back Courtney Brown, another guy who is long overdue in joining us to come back on the show, so look forward to catching up to Courtney. We'll get a return visit from former Jets and Broncos defensive back Nick Ferguson. Former Colts defensive end Harvey Armstrong will be making his TNT debut with us, as will former Bucs defensive end Walter Carter. And as Ed White talked about a minute ago, Walter is very outspoken about the effects that he's suffering from now from his time playing in the league. So we'll look forward to getting his story. Plus, of course, Tony Collins, he'll be back with us as well. So, like I say, another great show in store for you next week. We hope you'll come back and join us and be a part of it with us. Where can you find us on social media? Well, on Facebook, we have a Facebook page for the show, Thursday Night Tailgate. Give us a like on there. That's very important to us. Plus, both Bob and I have our own Facebook pages as well. Please also check out our newly designed website at ThursdayNightTailgate.com to see who some of our future guests are going to be. You can stream or download any of our archive episodes from free on that site. On Twitter, you can follow us. I am at CT Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. Plus, you can also stream us for free as a podcast over on our good friends TuneIn.com. Plus, Podbean as well. We really appreciate, our folks and our friends over at Podbean. They've been so very good to us, recommending the show and have us right there as a featured podcast on their sports and recreation section, plus on their mobile app as well. So you can take us with you everywhere you go on your mobile phone and your mobile device, whatever you got there, and listen to, our show. Stream us there on Podbean and over on TuneIn as well. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Thanks, Chris. I look forward to next week. And again, happy 300th to you. And our thanks to our announcer, Joe Lajanusa, for the great job he's always done with our weekly intro and ads, and to James Brocato and all the guys from Painted Faces for the upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, thanks to everyone tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. Until next week, good night, Kevin. We miss you.